The room was electric before Stephanie White even spoke. Every eye locked on her as the Fever rode their hot streak into Seattle, and with one look, you could tell she wasn't just answering questions, she was sending a message to her team, her opponents, and the league. And tonight, that message carried an edge you couldn't ignore. Indiana.
You're kind of part of this jumble in the standings where you're 16-12, Seattle's 16-12, and just a lot of teams kind of game above, game below. Just how important does it make this game and this road trip?
I mean, I think that the situation that we're in right now, every game is important, and every game that we're playing is there's got to be a sense of urgency. And oftentimes in the second half of the season that happens anyway, but certainly the way that things are with the standings and opportunities to get wins and get tough wins on the road are important. But we have to take it one game at a time, and we have to be where our feet are, and we got to attack a great Seattle team.
Indiana came into Seattle with the kind of momentum that makes every opponent nervous, riding a winning streak that's turned heads across the league, and now facing a Storm team fighting to stay relevant in a season slipping away. The stakes weren't just about another regular season game, this was about proving dominance, about showing that the Fever aren't just a good story, they're a force. The atmosphere in Climate Pledge Arena was buzzing hours before tip-off. Storm fans...
Obviously, you had the travel to deal with, but is there anything you can do game plan-wise to take advantage of them coming off double overtime, 40 hours ago?
I mean, I think one of the things that we have a benefit is our depth. So we're just going to continue to bring multiple bodies off the bench, try to wear them down. These players have been playing in this league a long time, and this is not abnormal. The way that the scheduling is and how much they have to play and heavy minutes and all of that. So they're used to this. But for us, it's we've got to try to use our depth to our advantage and try to stay fresh and give them different looks on the defensive end of the floor that can hopefully make it difficult and make them work that much harder after coming off of a double overtime game.
Loud and confident, but you could feel the undercurrent of uncertainty because they knew this Indiana squad, led by Caitlin Clark's explosive offense and anchored by a new defensive toughness, could dismantle them if given the chance. And yet, the spotlight wasn't only on the players, it was on Stephanie White, the architect behind this resurgence, the one making every strategic decision that could tilt the balance tonight. Her words in that pregame media session weren't just filler, they were calculated, deliberate, and carefully aimed to set the tone for the battle ahead. From the moment Stephanie White leaned into the microphone, her tone was calm but commanding, the kind of steady confidence that makes you listen closer.
Coach, you guys have had a lot of success, more success than anyone without their star player. How have you guys been able to stick together without having Caitlin on the floor?
I think first and foremost, we got a great group of women. They're team first. They pull for one another. They're selfless and they're capable. And when you have that, it just they've been resilient all year long, and they rally together. They're a connected group, and I think that's really important. And we have capable players. We certainly play a little differently without Caitlin on the floor, but the confidence that each one of these women has gotten in the ability to make plays in big moments, the depth that we have so that you really never can key on one or two players. We've got multiple players that can step up and have big games for us. I think it makes us more balanced on the offensive end, and the versatility that we have defensively has been big for us. And so, I think this group's been resilient. They've come together, they're playing really well together, and they play for each other, and you really can't discount how important that is when you're playing for the person beside you.
There was no wasted energy, no over-explaining, just sharp, deliberate points that hinted at the game plan without ever giving the Storm a clear look. She praised her team's resilience, noting how they'd fought through injuries, travel fatigue, and the constant spotlight that comes with Caitlin Clark's presence, but she quickly shifted to the challenge ahead, making it clear that Seattle was not to be underestimated. There was a firmness in her delivery, the subtle kind that lets everyone know the standards in Indiana's locker room are sky high. And yet, beneath that composure, there was a spark, a competitive edge in her voice, like she had spotted a weakness in Seattle she planned to exploit. It wasn't trash talk, but it was a signal, and anyone paying attention could hear it loud and clear. Then came the moment that shifted the entire tone of the room. Stephanie White dropped a line that had the reporters glancing at each other, scribbling notes faster than before. When asked about what it would take
Coach, what do you think is the biggest key to the consistent play as of late? We've been 4 games in a row looking for number 5. What has that been that thing?
I mean, I think a couple things. I don't know that I feel like we've been consistent, but being able to consistently string wins together. I think defensively, when we're disruptive, when our attention to detail is high, we make things difficult for opponents. And in those moments where we, like last game, for example, have high turnovers, we were still able to get stops, and we've got to be able to continue to be able to do that. Or in the moments where we're having trouble offensively, we can rely on our defense, and defense travels. So that's number one. Number two, I think the way that we've been moving the ball. We've had a high assist rate. We've been able to play inline to inline to get to second and third actions. The ball's been finding the right shot on the floor. And that's important for us. We got to make defenses work. We've got to play inline to inline. We can't let the ball get stuck. That's when we're at our best. And I think we've really begun to find that connectivity on both ends.
To beat Seattle on their home floor, she didn't give the usual safe coach speak about staying focused or playing our game. Instead, she leaned in slightly, locked eyes with the questioner, and said, "We know exactly where they're vulnerable, and we plan to test that from the very first possession." It was the kind of confident statement that's rare in a league where coaches often hide behind vague cliches. And she didn't stop there. When pressed on whether that meant targeting specific matchups, she smiled a sharp, knowing smile and said only, "We'll see how quickly they adjust." That smile was everything.
Obviously, the first matchup was different with CC playing, but what did you take away from that one that you're looking to replicate again and also adjust?
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's a really good team, and we've got to make sure our attention to detail from a personnel standpoint is high. We can't allow their players to get to their comfort zones. We've got to make them hit tough shots, and we got to live with those tough shots. And they're a really solid defensive team. I mean, they're high level on the defensive end of the floor, so we've got to be patient. We've got to make sure that we understand, what we're looking for on the offensive end of the floor. We can't over-penetrate. We've got to allow the ball, again, to find the right shot, but our passes have to be on time, on target, because they make you pay if they don't. They've got great length, they've got great athleticism, and they come at you from a lot of different angles. So we've got to do a good job of making sure that our attention to detail on both ends is there.
Part poker face, part warning shot. It told the Storm that Indiana's coaching staff had dissected them in film sessions, found the cracks, and were ready to press until they broke. It was a subtle power play, a public declaration that this wasn't just another game, it was a statement game. And even though her words were measured, they carried weight, especially for a team that's been surging in confidence while the Storm have been scrambling to hold their ground. It was clear she wanted her players to hear this as much as the media fuel for the fire that was about to be lit the moment the ball went up. But as sharp as her game plan talk was, there was something else hanging in the air, an undercurrent of chatter that no one could quite ignore. Rumors had been swirling for days that the Fever's rotation might see a sudden shakeup, whispers about possible lineup tweaks, or even a player being held back for precautionary reasons. Reports suggested that Seattle's camp had picked up on some of these hints, with insiders claiming the Storm were already preparing for unexpected matchups. Of course, White wasn't about to confirm any of it. When a reporter tried to dig deeper, asking whether the Fever were planning to rest a key starter or test new combinations, she didn't flinch.
Caitlin obviously came in today and practice close. Just how is her recovery going, and how close do you think she's getting to a return?
Yeah, I mean, we have updates, and her recovery's going well. It's just, I think, for us staying the course and making sure that we're really diligent about each step that we take, and that we don't have setbacks, and that we're patient with it. I know she wants to be out here on the floor, and we want her out here on the floor, but making sure that she's ready is the most important thing. I still don't know how far we are. We're going to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and go from there.
She simply said, "We'll put the group on the floor that gives us the..." Whether those whispers held any truth or were just smoke, the message was clear. Indiana was coming in with options, and Seattle wouldn't know what hit them until it was too late. When the conversation turned to strategy, Stephanie White didn't waste a single syllable. She zeroed in on what she called controlling the controllables, a phrase that might sound simple but is loaded with meaning for a team about to go head-to-head with Seattle in their own building. She talked about tempo, how the Fever couldn't let the Storm dictate the pace, how they had to keep pushing the ball, forcing Seattle into uncomfortable defensive rotations before they could get set. She emphasized defensive discipline, warning that any lapse against the Storm's perimeter shooters could swing momentum in an instant. And without naming names, she hinted at specific targets, talking about closing space quickly on their creators and forcing decision-makers into their weaker hand. To the casual ear, it might have sounded like standard coach talk. But for anyone who's been following the Fever closely, it was clear she was pointing directly at the Storm's core playmakers, signaling a plan to squeeze them from the opening tip until the final buzzer. White also stressed physicality, making it clear she expected her players to win the battle on the boards, to body up in the paint, and to turn every rebound into a fast break opportunity. This wasn't just talk, this was the blueprint for dismantling Seattle's game. And the way she delivered it left little doubt that her team had drilled these points over and over until they became...
Coach, what's impressed you about what Ari McDonald's been able to come in and do, and how she's been able to impact that team? To impact the team, especially without Caitlin on the board.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, she's a student of the game. Her ability to come in and know the offense, study the offense, was big for us. You feel comfortable putting the ball in her hands because she did her homework. I think that her speed, we don't have anybody with her kind of speed and ability to get downhill. That's important for us. We needed that. It gives us another playmaker, so we don't have to rely solely on Kelsey to be a playmaker. And she digs in and sets the tone for us on the defensive end of the floor. And so I think she's fit perfectly with what we want to do and how we want to play on both ends.
Second nature. She wasn't hoping the Fever would execute, she was expecting it. By the time Stephanie White wrapped up her pregame media availability, you could tell her words weren't just for the cameras, they were a direct line to her locker room. She spoke about trust, about how every player on the roster had a role, and how the strength of this team came from believing in each other's execution, not just individual talent. She made it clear that the Fever's success wasn't built on one star carrying the load, even if Caitlin Clark's presence was always a headline. It was about a collective mindset, a culture of accountability. She reminded them, without naming them, that teams who crumble in the final minutes are the ones that forget their identity, and that wasn't going to be Indiana. There was a quiet fire in her delivery, the kind that says, "We're here to take what's ours and nothing less." And as she stood to leave, she offered one last remark that hung in the air long after she exited. "We know exactly who we are, and tonight, we're going to show it." It was equal parts rallying cry and warning shot, a final stamp of authority before stepping into the Storm literally and figuratively. The press conference ended, but the sense of anticipation only grew. You could feel it, the Fever weren't just here to compete, they were here to make a statement. As the cameras shut off and the hum of the press room faded, the message Stephanie White delivered lingered like the echo of a pregame war drum. This wasn't just another stop on the schedule, this was a pivotal moment in a season that's been building towards something bigger. The Fever had walked into Seattle with swagger earned through hard wins, a sharpened game plan, and a coach who knows exactly how to plant doubt in an opponent before the opening tip. White's words weren't about theatrics, they were about shaping the psychological battle before the physical one even began. Seattle would bring the noise, the energy, and their homey court pride, but Indiana would bring precision, relentlessness, and a leader who refuses to be outprepaid. And as tip-off crept closer, one thing became clear. If Stephanie White's pregame tone was any indication, the Fever weren't here to survive the storm, they were here to control it.